At this time, we'd like to bring Gordon up with a guidance standard proposal. Have we got? There we go. Okay. The stand is yours.
Hi, folks. How are you? It's good to be with you. I could listen to the Durfees all day long. In just a minute, we are going to have another vote on a guidance standard. Feel free to insert your swear word here. I just have a couple of things to say before we proceed with that vote. A lot of us, myself included, have thought of our choice as a binary choice. Either we accommodate the majority and print a guidance standard in opposition of the wishes of the minority, or we accommodate the minority and wait until we have unanimity before we can publish. We think that there's a third choice that is completely legitimate and that may please the Lord. And that's to do our very best today and tomorrow to come to mutual agreement, to produce a large majority that gathers around a single guidance standard, and then turn it back to the folks. If you feel at that point that we have mutual agreement, then there's nothing in the language of the answer that stops us from adding that guidance standard to our own personal set of scriptures. We don't have to wait for the Scripture Committee or anyone else. The words of the Lord are not print and they are not published. They are add. And of course, if you are of the opinion that we need a majority, we need unanimity before we can publish, there is nothing that stops you from pursuing that goal. Unanimity is a worthy goal, and you'll have our blessing. I should tell you that I'm speaking on behalf of the group today that proposed the guidance standard vote. Just one other thought along those lines. In Boise, we voted unanimously to accept a set of scriptures that the Lord tells us are imperfect. It's probably not a great idea to expect perfection out of a guidance standard, since, after all, it's us that are producing them. If we can accept an imperfect set of scriptures as a vehicle to go forward with the hope and the expectation that in God's time He will improve those scriptures, perhaps we could do the same with the guidance standard. The second comment I want to make is that time may be short. In 1831, the saints gathered in Independence, Missouri, and were told that this is the spot for Zion. The Lord told them. By 1832, they were already under condemnation for taking lightly the things that they had received. And by 1833, the printing press had been burned, people had been tarred and feathered, and they had been driven from the state. The Lord told them that they had lost their inheritance in Zion for jarring strivings and contentions. 1 year after He condemned them for taking lightly the things that they'd been given. Let me just read this from the answer. Do not murmur, saying, too much has been required at our hands in too short a time. If your hearts were right, it was a light thing I have asked. You hinder and delay, and then you say, I require too much of you, and do not allow you time. I don't know how much time we have, folks, but I wonder if we should err on the side of dispatch. I'm not suggesting that we artificially force something that we don't have. What I'm suggesting is maybe it would be a good idea to look at historical precedents and ask ourselves, do we have an unlimited amount of time? There's one last point I'd like to make before we go ahead with the vote. Some have suggested or may believe that this vote is just the same old, same old. This is another attempt, another competitive attempt for the majority to force its will down the throats of the minority. I think that's unfair. And here's the reason. There's an element to this vote that you don't find in other votes. Nothing that you've experienced in the civic arena, or I don't think anything you've experienced in a church setting, is anything like the second leg, the second part of this vote, which is this. The minority is voluntarily, out of love for their neighbors, asked, not compelled, and I hope not pressured. You shouldn't vote for this because you feel pressured. Do what you think is right. The minority is asked to look around and take what everyone else wants and desires as important as what they want, maybe even more important. Can we step off of our little patch that we've defended and think for a moment about what the other guy wants? Wondrous possibilities lie ahead. A shining city on a hill and the chance to interact with heaven itself, but only if we can act like heaven acts. Let's go ahead with the vote. Janine Custer and John Pratt will stand as our two witnesses today so that we may follow Paul's injunction regarding witnesses, and they will confirm, if they are able, which guidance standard is preferred by conference attendees as determined by a voice vote. If our witnesses cannot agree on which guidance standard is preferred by the assembly, then the vote comes to an end and the matter will be tabled until the next conference. If they are able to determine a clear majority preference, then in the second half of the vote today, the witnesses will also tell us if they believe the conference has produced a large majority that are agreed on a statement of principles. Several of the guides and standards that have received the most support, as determined by earlier online votes and efforts, have been selected randomly by the witnesses, our witnesses, so that the order of the voting is impartial. These guides and standards will be presented individually for voting on by the conference, but in the interest of time, the guides and standards that have received less support over the last year will initially be voted on as a group. And if this group receives the most votes, then that group will be divided into its constituent guides and standards, and they will be voted on individually. We ask everyone, please, to vote for only one document. But if you do not prefer any of the documents, there is no need to vote for a document. You will still be able to vote to support or oppose the majority's choice. If you oppose the majority's choice, or if you oppose the vote itself, you will be given an opportunity to register your opposition. Here are the documents that we will vote on in just a minute that are named individually to begin with. The Lots Guidance Standard, produced by 7 individuals chosen by lots. The August 5 document, Guidance Standard, the one produced by Jeff Savage and his committee. The Non-Mancaf SWAFUG's Guidance Standard. The Rock of Jesus Christ, produced by Jared Livesley. The Original Governing Principles, produced by Jeff Savage. And The Beginning Believer's Help List, produced by Paul Durham. In addition, as I said, there will be another group that we will initially vote on as a group. And again, the order of the voting from here forward will proceed as determined by our witnesses who pulled these out of a hat in order to figure out the order. So we will now proceed with the voting. All of you who favor the Lots Guidance Standard, the one produced by the 7 individuals chosen by lots, please say yes.
Yes. I have a question. Not all of us have read all of these. I thought you were going to read them.
That would take quite a bit more time than I've been given by the conference.
Then the voting is invalid because many people haven't read all of these. How can you vote if you haven't read all of them?
I would answer you in this way. You're welcome to abstain if you choose. You're welcome to support the majority's choice if you choose. Or you're welcome to take some time and read them all and come back tomorrow and participate in the second half of the vote tomorrow. You will have an opportunity at that point to affirm your opposition or register.
Another question. Was this publicized that these would be presented for a vote and that we should read these ahead of time? Because I didn't see that anywhere.
I'll let the congregation answer. Did you know about it? How many didn't know about it? Okay. I have lost track. I'm sorry. Did we vote on the August 5? No. Okay. I apologize. All of you who favor the August 5 guidance standard, the one produced by Jeff Savage and his committee, please say yes. All of you who favor the non-man-calf SWAFUGS guidance standard, please say yes. All of you who favor the Rock of Jesus Christ, the one produced by Jared Livesley as our guidance standard, please say yes. All of you who favor Jeff Savage's original governing principles as our guidance standard, please say yes. All of you who favor the Beginning Believer's Help List, the brochure by Paul Durham, as our guidance standard, please say yes. She counts. All of you who favor a document other than the ones that have been named and voted on so far, please say other. If you object to this process or think that the vote is illegitimate, please say no. No. That one counts too. Let's ask our witnesses to come up and tell us if there was a clear majority preference for one of the guides and standards, and if so, which was it?
I think we need to agree. Don't John and I need to agree? John and I need to agree. So which one?
I think the first one,
Yeah,
first one is really the most,
yes,
and they weren't all yelling.
yes. So I, as a witness, say that the first vote, the lots guidance standard received the most yeses without yelling.
Yeah. And I agree, there was a little yelling there, but then the yelling picked up on the other ones. So, but the first to me was clearly the most, and it was a majority, I believe.
Thank you. We will now proceed with the second half of the vote today. We will ask you to stand at one point for this part of the vote in order that the folks viewing online can get a better sense of what's happening. Now, I don't know if the cameraman has permission to pan the camera around and show us the congregation, but if he does, we'd like him to do that. Once again, if you object to the vote or to the outcome of the vote, you will be given a chance to make that known. We will now proceed with the voting. If you voted for the majority's choice, or if you preferred a different document, but you are willing to accept the majority's choice, or if you had no preference for any of the guides and standards, but you are willing to accept the majority's choice, if you are in any of these three groups, we ask you to please stand. If you that are standing are agreed on the Lot's Statement of Principles as our guide and standard, please say yes. Yes. Thank you. Please be seated. If you do not or cannot agree to accept the majority's choice, or if you are opposed to this vote, if you are in either of those two groups, would you please stand? You bet. If you do not or cannot agree to accept the majority's choice, or if you are opposed to the vote, if you are in either of those two groups, would you please stand? If you that are standing do not or cannot accept the majority's choice, or if you object to the vote, please say. Wasn't that clear? I have no desire to excommunicate you, Rob, because I love you. Please stay.
Doesn't the Lord tell us to not move on in haste? This seems like a very hasty decision. The Lord said that this was supposed to be a thing of light. This does not feel like light. John tells us to seek after the Lord because He is light. This does not feel like the way He would want it done. This feels very hasty, out of a decision where we feel like we're trying to force His hand into something that we want.
I don't see how you can say it is the case. This has been going on much longer. The Lord said He would have accepted the first one. It was going to be lively.
He never said that. But if our hearts aren't right, does it matter?
This work is an eternal work. This is not too long. God the Lord still lives here, working out this work. We can endure a little longer. We can endure to the end, where we are not left behind. These are real people. Which one would you want to cut off?
Absolutely none of them.
There is a choice, yes, but the choice is not which document wins. The choice is which do we choose, light or dark? And light is all-inclusive. To those who want light, I have been working with this project from the beginning. online, you said here, before you even started this vote, that this is the way it is. That is an assumption. It is based solely on an assumption. And I'm fine with making assumptions, but let's call it an assumption rather than a fact. Yes, this right here, this here, in this group is a fact. There is a majority going in one direction. And this is a fact. There is a minority not going in that direction. But be clear, the majority leaves the minority. The minority is staying and saying, let's keep working.
Can I respond to that? This vote binds absolutely none of us to anything that they don't want to do.
Except a percentage.
I gave you a chance to speak. Can I answer your question? If the minority feels strongly, and I know that they do, that unanimity is necessary before...
That's not my opinion.
Can I...
You have spoken for me as if that was my opinion. Unanimity was not my opinion. It might be some people's opinion, but it does not represent me. So you're misrepresenting me if you're talking on behalf of me as the minority. And I am not a quiet minority. I am a minority, though. I am a minority. I will say that. But that does not respect what my opinion is. And you're speaking as if you're me. It does not require unanimity, in my opinion. It requires God to speak to me. Just like Johnny Durfee said.
And all of these folks that have voted today in preference of the Lot's document, did the Lord not speak to them? Are they not listening to the Spirit? It was a question. It was just a question.
No, the question was proposed to me, did they not hear the Lord's voice? I cannot answer that question. How can I say that they did not hear the Lord's voice?
Folks, I'd like to go ahead and finish this vote, or I guess if we're... Would you like to finish the rest of the vote? Thank you. If you do not or cannot agree to accept the majority's choice, or if you are opposed to this vote, if you are in either of these two groups, would you please stand? If you that are standing do not or cannot accept the majority's choice, or if you object to this vote, please say no. Thank you. Please be seated. Let's ask our witnesses to come up and tell us if they believe that the conference has produced a large majority that have agreed on a statement of principles.
On the second standing vote, I would estimate that between 90 and 95% stood, and only those that we saw at the very end not stand, which looked to be 15 to 20, were opposed. So I'd say yes, a very large majority.
Janine, did you say, and you agree with that? Thank you. We invite everybody that was opposed to the outcome of this vote, or who thought that the vote was illegitimate, who would like to make their concerns known to the group that proposed the vote, to meet with us immediately after the meeting in that corner of the auditorium. This will not be a counseling session or an attempt to talk anyone into anything. We will not pressure you in any way. We just want to hear what you have to say. That's an invitation. It is not a requirement. We have no authority to require anyone to do anything. But we do thank you for participating in the vote today. We will proceed tomorrow with the second half of the vote, in which we will ask if the conference would like to proceed and adopt the Lot's Guide and Standard as our guide that we can individually add to our scriptures. Thank you very much.